Move on to question number 2. Deputy Brady has 30 seconds to introduce
Minister, 2 weeks ago, Sinn Féin brought forward a motion dealing with the much discredited JobPat programme, and also made references to successful schemes such as the LES, CE schemes, job clubs that actually work and have worked over many years across the state. Minister, what are you doing to honour the democratic wishes of this Dáil, who overwhelmingly supported the Sinn Féin motion regarding JobPat?
Ministers, 2 minutes.
Thanks, Lascan Corla. The Government's position on the recent motion debated in this House on JobPat services was clearly set out in my contribution and others at the time. And I do, however, note the views of the House on the matter. However, the position of the Government remains unchanged. My department has entered into legally binding arrangements with the JobPat providers, and the Government will honour these contractual commitments. I will reiterate again that the JobPat service performance recorded and published by the Department exceeds contracted target levels, that credible, large-scale customer research also published by the Department shows very high levels of customer satisfaction and very low levels of complaints. The Department also operates a robust inspection and compliance system, and a detailed report from the Controller and Auditor General made no recommendations in regard to how the service is governed. The Department will shortly publish the results of an econometric evaluation of the service, which will further indicate that the outcomes for participating job seekers, both in terms of employment and earnings, are better than those of non-participants. Compared to this, the body of evidence, I note the criticisms of the services are based on anecdotal or very small-scale research, which would not be considered as reliable evidence in any serious evaluation service. I previously did, during that particular debate and prior to that, ask deputies to forward me examples of cases that they believe substantiated the criticisms of the service. And since the debate on the private member's motion, I was provided with just 2 examples of people who expressed dissatisfaction with the service. The case is being reviewed, but the nature of the complaint does not differ greatly from representations which are occasionally received in respect of other activation services, including the Department's own intro services, our CV clubs, our LESs, our jobs clubs, etc. It's certainly not suggestive of any widespread or systemic issue within the service over and above that would be expected in a service that has now served in excess of 200,000 Irish citizens. Therefore, I am satisfied that the proper course of action is to continue with the service in order to support our long-term unemployed job seekers. And thankfully, Lascan Corla, those long-term job seekers are dropping in their numbers, as reported by the CSO today.
Deputy Brady, 1 minute.
Thanks, Lascan Corla. Well, Minister, TDs from right across this chamber voiced serious concerns and gave example after example as to what exactly is going on within Torres Nua and CTEC. And certainly the evidence that was given in this chamber is not anecdotal. I stated during that debate, TDs don't lie at home dreaming up these cases. These are real cases. TDs are the eyes and the ears of the public, and those stories are brought in here. So certainly not anecdotal evidence. Minister, during the debate, you put out a figure of 41,000 full-time jobs commenced through JobPat. Myself and other TDs questioned for a breakdown on those 41,000 so-called job starts. And in correspondence that you have given back to me, quite startling correspondence, Minister, it shows that just 11,334 jobs were sustained in employment exceeding 12 months. 11,334 out of 206,000, Minister, and you still stand over the fact that this is the so-called the most successful labour activation scheme in the state. Minister, how can you conclude that 41,000 full-time jobs, not even close to half of them, have been sustained in employment for over a year is successful? Minister, the democratic will of the Dáil, we have spoken here. You must listen to that and you must act on it.
Ministers, 1 minute.
I think, Deputy, you're fully aware that private members' motions are not legally binding instructions on government, but what are legally binding are the contractual arrangements that this government entered, or the last government entered into, with our 2 contractors, amongst others, with regard to activation in this country. And I don't think you and I are ever going to agree on this, and so we'll have to agree to disagree. For some reason, you have a problem with JobPat, and I'll say it again: it's the most successful activation programme that this state has ever had. And you don't have to take my figures for it. You can take the CSO figures, who released them today. We have the largest drop in long-term unemployment that we've had in years in the last year. And that didn't happen by magic. That happened because of all of our activation partners. The CTECs of this world, the Thursdays News of this world, all of our ILDN partners, all of my CE host companies, all of my TUS companies, they all work collectively and collaboratively with the state to ensure that the people who are at risk of being long-term unemployed get the best services that they can to get jobs. And despite your best efforts, it's working. And we're going to continue to do it. And I think I've said it to you before, we're conducting a review of all of our activation services at the moment to make sure that the next generation of Ireland's unemployed get a tailor-made service. And we'll do that with our ILDN partners. And there's a review going on of my CE schemes, and we'll do it for RSS, and we'll do it with JobsPath and Thursday and CTEC when the econometric review comes
Brady's
out.
final question.
Sorry, Ken.
Well, Minister, it's not just I that has a problem with this. This Dáil has a problem with JobPath. And quite clearly you're not going to honour the express will of the Dáil, and that's the express will of the people out there. Because, Minister, you misled the House here during the debate. You said nobody had actually made complaints to the Ombudsman. I've checked with the Ombudsman, and there's been numerous complaints to the Ombudsman in relation to Thursdays News and CTEC. In the motion, it also talks about investing and upscaling the successful schemes out there, the LESs, the CEs, and we know referrals over to CEs and LESs have plummeted. Thousands less being referred to the LESs. CE vacancies, as we stand here this afternoon, there's 1,971 vacancies within CE schemes, the length and breadth of the state, and that's not by accident, Minister, that is by design. There's real concern out there, Minister, in relation to the LES. And I want to ask you a question, because we had the Indicon report published a couple of weeks ago, and there is a strong view that that report is paving the way for the privatisation of some of the sectors, the successful schemes, such as the LES, in terms of the public procurement. I want to ask you now, Minister, are you going to invest in the LES? Because there is concern there, there's real, genuine concern what your intentions are. There's a feel that the ground is being prepared for the privatisation of that sector going out through public procurement, and that the payment by results model will be rolled out. So, Minister, can you outline what your plans are for the LES, the CE schemes and the successful ones there? And finally, Minister, you cannot ignore the express will of the Dáil. We have spoken here. JobPath needs to go, and you need to ensure it does go, Minister.
Doherty to respond.
Thanks, Lascan Corla. I think, Deputy, what I can't ignore is the contractual obligations that the state has with two companies to provide very successful outcomes for in excess of 200,000 people that have gone through their doors. And I also stated in the House previously that the termination of the contracts, or a step away from any of the terms of contract, would leave the state potentially exposed to millions of euros. But you see, you have a magic chequebook, so that doesn't bother you. And it also doesn't bother you that this is actually working, that people are actually getting work. 48,000 people have got work in the last number of years. But I tell you respectfully, Deputy, seeing as I'm the one that's responding to your question.
Minister must be given an opportunity without interruption.
Asking questions requires an answer, okay? So asking a question requires you being quiet when I'm speaking and me being quiet and listening to you when you're speaking. It's something we have a real problem with.
We're going to move on.
Thanks.
Question number